Welcome everybody to Write Better Together. Hey, I'm Jon Meyers. Look, everybody, it's Emily Brooks. Arthur, how'd you get out of your bubble today?
He's still stuck in his bubble for a little longer.
What are we talking about today
He's
besides
trying, though.
this baby behind his back? Poor guy.
So we have quite the list.
Yes.
We have quite the guest, Meredith Lyons.
Wow.
Like award-winning author. She's awesome. And she's going to be talking about writing through depression and anxiety. We are also going to have listener responses. Meredith is going to give you all a call to action that you can respond to. We're going to play Hey Jon Meyers, or we're going to not play. We're going to do Hey Jon Meyers, I don't know, where I teach Jon Meyers something, and then we're going to have the final act where we play a silly game. But first,
yes, we're going to
how did you get out of your bubble?
I went to a webinar with Michael Jamin.
Yes.
With the Jamin. And I got a little one-on-one time with him afterwards, and I wanted to share everyone the answer, the question and the answer that I got. I asked him, well, first of all, the most interesting thing was it was about how it was the pep talk every screenwriter needed. And so if you have a chance to go to that webinar, do that, because everyone's so negative and he's positive. It's harsh. I'll tell you that right now. It's harsh positivity, but it's wonderful. But the question I asked, he's on his tour for his book. I'll hold it up again because it's still sitting here from the thing. A paper orchestra. Yeah,
in our show notes.
Orchestra. We'll put in the show notes again. And so he goes to cities and he performs 2 chapters out of the book, different chapters for different cities. And I asked him, because that's my future performative memoir. It's interesting. He just calls it community theater. I'm just a one-man show at community theater. He's not trying to say it's a big, I'm not running the biggest theater in town or anything like that. He's doing it in community, and he's just calling it community theater. So I need to flip the switch in my mind that I'm going to be a community theater performer in 2 years. That's kind of weird for me. But I asked him how, other than Los Angeles and New York, where all he is following, how he's picking the other cities that he goes to, because I'm being strategic in my speaking at writers conference. I want to lay the groundwork for the next 2 years, so people at least might have seen me at a writers conference in Oklahoma City or in Nashville or Niagara Falls or Minneapolis or places I want to go. So when I go and do the community theater tour, I can't believe I'm calling it community theater, that I'll, that at least I'll have some people on a mailing list and that will know about it. And so I said, do you go by how many books you've sold, in the city, or like, how are you picking the cities that aren't Los Angeles and New York? And he's only going by there's a spot on his website where you can go in there and suggest your city. And so like I've gone in there and I've suggested the biggest city closest to me, and I put in Nashville where it's close to you. And that's what he's going by. And I said that, and that's it. It's not, is it a literary community? I said, I know there's no specific like number that you have to hit arbitrarily. I said, let's say Oklahoma City, Nashville and Minneapolis are all in there. Do you consider the size of the city, or and he's like, no, I just go by the number that people put in there. And if it's at 100, if Nashville's at 100, he's like, that's not enough because 100 people aren't going to come. And so he didn't say, I have to get to 1,000, or he didn't say what a threshold that he had to get to, but it just had to be a lot larger than 100. And then he gave the example of, so this webinar that I was in, 392 people had registered for it. And he says this on the webinar, so it's not like a secret. I'm not divulging any numbers. And he goes, and 90 people showed up. And I also like the way this needs to be a whole segment. This needs to be a whole episode. But I like the way that he reframed that, and I think it's helpful for us when we look through a lens of how many people come to things and stuff. And then the paying people, the group that I was in, so there was a free version of it, and then there was a paying version of it where you got to be, and it was a low price, and where you got to have the extra half hour after the free version. There were only 20 of us in that. He pointed out to the 90 people that were in the free and the 20 of us that had paid, you have to be willing to invest in your community, or invest in your career, and invest in the community. So you have a responsibility to invest in yourself. And sometimes investing in yourself is to going and seeing other people in community theater. And then you'll start to know the bartender at the community theater, and you'll start to know the concession stand woman, and you'll start to know the ticket taker. And I thought that was very eye-opening. And then it is investing in yourself. He's like, I have 10,000 followers on Instagram, 300 signed up. So that's 392 people who are willing to invest in themselves. But no, really, it wasn't. It was only 90 people who showed up. Those are the people that gave the time to invest in their own career. Or if it's a life coach, then to invest in improvement and mental health improvement, or whatever the thing is. When we talked to Meredith just now, the people that go to her thing at the Porch is people who are willing to invest the time to into having a better life. The last thing I want to say about it is the investment in your career, or in your having a better life, increasing whatever, wellness or mental health, or whatever the topic is. People will say that it's money when it's not money, it's time. And he tracks the people that unsubscribe from his Substack, and it'll ask a reason. Every once in a while people won't give a reason, but he was surprised. The number one reason isn't because it costs $4 a month or $6 a month. The number one reason is he's never had one that says the content. It's never the content. The number one reason is time. And he's like, I do two things, and it'll say on Substack, or it'll say on our emails, it'll say that's a 4-minute read or a 2-minute read, right? He goes, I do 2 4-minute emails a week. You don't have 8 minutes of time to invest in your career, then you're not serious about it, and then you're a hobbyist. And I thought that was a great way to look at it. And I have a Substack, but I'm going to start using it more next year. And yeah, if you don't have 8 minutes to invest in your career, what are you doing?
Wow.
There you go.
That is so well put, and like such a good reframe. Like, because we talked, I confessed in the last episode that I get a little caught up in numbers sometimes with my blog. And what I often think is, okay, well, what blogs am I following? And who do I invest time in? Because, there's so much content out there that it takes, the other person has to have some kind of investment in themselves that they see it's worth going to you for that investment and for that time. And so I've been trying to invest more in myself by reading other blogs and interacting with them and being part of like you talked about, the community and knowing the people at the community theater. I see that as like, I'm getting to know these other bloggers as well.
Yeah, and there's a like our webinar was great, right? We had great content. So there's an element of it of just having confidence in your own content, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so 6 people show up or 10 people show up. That's not a reflection on your content. It's not a reflection on your price. It's a reflection on those you people watching this right now, how much you're committed to investing in your career. Yeah, Jamin just flipped that
So
with
good.
so much confidence. It's a reflection on the attendees. It's not a reflection on you.
That's so good. So my out of bubble story was actually not really a story as much as an update. Because this is all like what you're saying is connected to this.
Of course.
So I had announced that I was going to write a guide to writing about female characters. And I did this because that's the most popular post on my blog right now for some weird reason. So far, I've had 0 engagement that product. And one of the things that I realized is it kind of made me think about when Sandra Taylor was on, and she said, sometimes you don't want to go viral because you bring in the people who don't actually want what you have. Now, I can't know who's coming to my website. I can look at their search terms and I can look at the stats, but I don't know how many people are looking for, they're just putting in like how to describe a woman, and then they're getting this Christian blogger talking about like body image and stuff. So they're like, this isn't what I was looking for. They may click on the website and then leave immediately. There may also be people on there who are actually really interested in what I'm saying, but maybe they're not willing to invest, a couple dollars in learning more. So I'm just trying to learn from it and also consider that maybe what I've written is actually not for the audience that is coming to my blog. But you all, if you want to learn how to write female characters, first of all, I was looking at Lucy V. Hay has a book on writing female characters. Do you have it? Oh, that's awesome if you have it.
This one on writing diverse characters.
Oh, that's different. She has writing diverse characters, and then she has one on writing female characters. Ours is very different. It's so, we talk about writing as in a competition. Like, you should definitely check out her book. Mine, I kind of see it as like, especially for men, but for women too, if you are unsure of like, are you being insensitive when you describe this woman? Are you going to offend people? I mean, even I, as a woman, I'm like, people are going to hate this female character because people are just overly judgmental of female characters right now. So I kind of try to help with that. And then I also try to help with like actually giving you description ideas, talking about active description, and then like maybe you don't understand women's clothing or you don't understand women's makeup. Like I try to give resources for that too, so you have the language to use to describe them. So that's kind of my pitch and also what I'm learning at the same time.
So when you said maybe they didn't want to spend the money, or maybe they didn't want to do, like when you were giving them maybe what happened to these people scenarios, there's also people that they got what you made it as, here's the three things, and like they didn't get what they wanted. But there are also people who got what they wanted, and you did it. They're like, oh, this is great, but then they just didn't want more.
They didn't want more. Yeah.
Or you're also measuring it over the last 2 years or whatever versus the last 2 days.
Right. So this has been up for somewhere between a week and 2 weeks, and so I don't have enough data.
Right.
I know that I've probably gotten 500 views on the blog and 10 views on the product. So we'll see. I'll keep updating. But yeah, sometimes you make stuff and, I had fun making it.
It's never about price. I learned that from Brian Baker with the crazy expensive fountain pens.
Yeah.
If they want it, they'll find. They won't feed their children, but they'll buy a $500 fountain pen.
Yep. All right. So we had an episode with H.H. Rune about writing with ADHD. And we had a response to that episode. So Emily Rhinelander, or Miley Rhinelander as we know her, said, I thank you for the enlightening interview with H.H. Rune. As a child, I struggled learning to read, but adapted and persevered to become the avid reader and writer I am today. And I should note that H.H. Rune also has dyslexia.
And Stephanie Jones does too.
And yeah. So she says, in sharing details about her life, H.H. Rune, I was shocked because I realized H.H. Rune was describing me in a very personal way. This was a life-changing podcast for me, and it is not hyperbolic to state that it gave me insight into some of my learning quirks and made me proud to acknowledge who I truly am. Thank you, H.H. Rune, and write better together.
That's crazy. Good, crazy. So H.H. Rune was watching TikTok videos, and that made her go get tested. Yeah. And then Miley was watching our videos with H.H. Rune, and then that made her realize what she's dealing with.
And H.H. Rune responded, wonderful, happy that we came into each other's path, which is exactly what you're talking about. Like,
yeah.
And you've actually asked H.H. Rune this question. Do you ever share your experiences? And the other people are like, hey, thanks for doing that. I get that. Well, because of that episode, now she can say yes.
So I wonder on today's episode when we watch, when we're getting ready to watch when we talked about with Meredith, if people will come out and say, "Wow, because she said she went and got tested for OCD."
Right. Yeah.
Spoiler alert! If you can't wait another 5 minutes to you watch.
Yeah. So, speaking of our interview with Meredith,
Yeah.
let me introduce her to you all. So, Meredith Lyons grew up in New Orleans, collecting 2 degrees. Huh? Narlands, collecting 2 degrees from Louisiana State University before running away to Chicago to be an actor. In between plays, she got her black belt and made martial arts and yoga her full-time day job. She fought in the Chicago Golden Gloves, ran the Chicago Marathon, and competed for Team USA in the Savate, SAVATE, I don't know, World Championships in Paris. In spite of doing each of these things twice, she couldn't stay warm and relocated to Nashville. She owns several swords, but lives a non-violent life, saving all swashbuckling for the page, knitting scarves, gardening, visiting coffee shops, and cuddling with her husband and 2 panther-sized cats. We didn't ask her about the panther-sized cats.
I've seen those cats on the Instagram, and they are huge.
Her first novel, Ghost Tamer, is on Amazon Editor's Pick for Best Sci-Fi Fantasy, an IBPA Benjamin Franklin Gold winner for Best Sci-Fi Fantasy, an IPPY Award winner for Best First Book, and a Silver Falchion Award comes back up for Best Book of 2023 and Best Supernatural. So, wow. And then a Dagger of Lightning releases April 1st, 2025, which is the day of recording, both with Camcat books.
Is it your dream to win a Silver Falchion Award?
Sure. I didn't even know what it was until a couple of weeks ago. So, here's our conversation with Meredith Lyons.
And we're back. I'm still Jon Meyers. Hey, look, everybody. It's still Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers. And hey, look, everybody. It's Meredith Lyons.
Oh, my gosh. You've met her before. I've never met her before. Tell us. Tell us how you met.
Bringing me in off the streets.
Tell us how you two met, and then jump in.
Well, at Writerfest.
Yes. Yeah. You were in a talk that I was doing with RJ Jacobs, I believe.
Yes, who we have also had on the podcast.
I was listening to his episode. I love RJ.
He's a very articulate person. Like, I feel like he's very careful with his words and speaks very well, and like is just
has
very
really
intelligent.
Good eye contact.
Yeah, yeah. But you all were speaking about like mental health and writing, and you had mentioned writing through depression. And I was like, we've got to have you on to talk about this. But first, tell us about your book launch today.
Yeah, we're recording on April Fool's Day, which is the day A Dagger of Lightning is releasing, which is very exciting for me. It's a romantasy with a spaceship on top, and got big plans at Parnassus. My mom made 85 cookies shaped like daggers and lightnings. We have lights. We have it's ridiculous. We're going overboard. So I am very excited.
I love that. And we love Parnassus as well.
Yes.
It is such a great support for local authors.
100%. Yeah. And if anybody's interested in the books, just go there and they will get a signed one. If you want a signed one, I will go down there and sign them, and they will ship them anywhere too. They are just amazing.
And I know they usually have a table specifically set for local authors as well.
They do, although they usually
makes it easy to find.
On the fantasy side, which I'm not complaining about because of my last name. I'm right next to Sarah J. Maas. So I'm like,
yeah,
someone, sure. if even 1% of her people accidentally grabbed me, I'd make bank.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Tom Hanks was just there.
Really?
He knew, Ann Patchett was friends with his assistant, really good friends with his assistant. And I guess I read her short stories, and she talks about, I forget what it's called now, which is terrible, but it's right there. But she mentions him in there. So I'm like, It's so cool that he was in there, but I'm like not surprised.
Yeah, so he just dropped in, Emily. I'll tell you the story real quick. He just dropped in because his daughter has a new nonfiction book out, and and so he was doing like a little like what we do when we're out in the public, like a little 1 minute thing. And Anne was saying this, and this, and he interrupts her, and she goes, "You're stepping on my lines, Tom Hanks." And he was so polite and contrite, and he backed off and let her finish her sentence. It was wonderful.
That's so cute. I would love to meet Tom Hanks.
Well, maybe he'll show up tonight at your thing at Parnassus.
God, wouldn't that be amazing? Get a selfie with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks has my book, y'all. I would buy him a copy. That would be amazing.
Wow.
There you
go. So can you also, before we start, tell us about what's going on with the Porch?
Yeah, yes. I would love to. I have an event coming up at the Porch on May 14th. It's a Wednesday night, and it is called Writing Through Anxiety and Depression. So, and it's basically the premise behind it is when writing is something that most of us do because we love it. Not many of us are doing it for the fat paycheck. But when your anxiety and or depression or any mental health issue really spikes, then suddenly that relationship can change. And it often adds to the frustration and whatever not fun feelings you're having when you can't interact with your writing the same way. So the class is on how to either continue writing during those times, like different things you can try to do, and also like when to be gentle with yourself and decide that maybe you need to take a break for a while.
So if anybody is in the Nashville area, we'll have links to that. And then are there like recordings of those after for people? Or
I personally usually do a slide deck, and I will email the slide deck to anyone who comes and participates. And for this one in particular, I did email a couple of therapists in the area. And I was like, if you are open to new patients, I would love to include your information, because sometimes finding a therapist is like the hardest part when you need therapy. And I wanted to make sure that, of course, there's a lot of anecdotal stuff in there that I've experienced and has worked for me, but I wanted to make sure it was all backed up with professional people and stuff like that. So all of that will be available. We'll probably do some like small, low pressure writing exercises, because I just really think it's important to get people writing a little bit. And I'm going to, I always email this stuff out beforehand just to try some different things to rattle things loose and see how people feel. Doesn't have to be any great work, but, just to get some things on the page while we're there and together. Low pressure, low stakes.
Yeah, that's great. I really hope some of our listeners can make it to that. But on that topic, because that's what we're also talking about today, I would love to hear your experience with this, because that was kind of what you talked about at WriterFest as well, like writing that first book through depression. And what was that like?
So it's a little bit of a complex answer, because I grew up in a time where I was told the first time I experienced a serious depression, it was situational. And I was told by a friend who was very well-meaning, don't bother getting on medication. Don't bother seeing anyone, because they're just going to diagnose you with situational depression. They'll put you on meds, and it's going to take just as long for the meds to hit and then for you to wean off of them than it would be for you to just get over it on your own. And so I just went through a horrible period of time and got over it on my own. But I also had people telling me, and I don't know if this was maybe true at the time, like, no, you don't want that on your record, because employers might see that sometime and not hire you if you've been treated for depression. So I spent more time than I needed to not seeking help for these things. And then later I had very bad, SAD,
seasonal affective.
Yes. Yeah. I was living in Chicago, and I went pescatarian, and I didn't realize how much vitamin D was in eggs and meat and stuff. And so the first winter that I went pescatarian, I didn't know what was happening to me. I just knew I was seriously depressed, and trying to get a therapist was just like, it was so horrible. Like trying to find someone and by the time the sun came out again, I was fine. And anyway, so then fast forward, and I'm writing Ghost Tamer, and I'm writing it around pandemic time. So it was like early 2021. So we're starting to open up, but we're not really open, and everyone is still really scared, and everyone's still very much online. And I moved to Nashville in 2019. So I didn't really know, I didn't have a community yet. I had this writing group that I'd met online, and that was the people that I hung out with. And I had written a book, and it was terrible, like the first book I wrote. But it taught me how to write, And so once I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I need to put this in a drawer and start something new. Tried a couple short stories, nothing really panned out. And so I started writing Ghost Tamer. It was based on a nightmare that I had. Really fun. And so I was like, well, I'll write the nightmare. I don't have anything to write right now. And for me, the one thing that was keeping me going was these Sunday meetings with this writing group. Like I had work, but it wasn't that great. And I was just struggling. I didn't have a lot of friends, and, we were financially just, as a lot of people were at the time, not great. So my fun thing was this writing group. And I basically was like, I'm going to have pages every Sunday, and no matter what. And, it was great. I'm glad I did it. It took me, I think, and I want to preface this by saying I tend to draft very quickly. It took me 6 months to draft this book, and you'll understand why that's significant when I talk about the book that I wrote when I wasn't depressed. It took me 6 months to draft this book, and it was because I forced myself to have the pages in every Sunday. And then they would give me critiques, and then I would edit those pages and make new pages. And so that's how this book got done. But it was like pulling teeth a lot of the times. Like I would just make myself sit down 30 minutes a day. And if those 30 minutes happened to be at the end of the day when I wanted to go to bed, I was like, well, you've committed. You have to sit down for these 30 minutes. And sometimes I would get in a good flow. And like my two characters, I really loved them. And so whenever they were on the page together, sometimes it just wrote itself. But I will never forget this one scene. It's near the end of the book. It was just, every word was agonizing. And I brought it to my writing group and I said, all right, tear it apart. What is wrong? And they were like, this is really good. Like, this is a great scene. Like that scene is in the book with very, very few changes, like maybe some line note alterations from when I wrote it. And I'll never forget, one of my friends told me, she's like, well, Meredith, that just proves that you need to write even when you don't feel like it, because you're still putting out good stuff. Wow. And it is a productive thing that I did. I did, in the same mindset, take it to a critique group. I was not prepared. It was like 20 people trying to critique your book in an hour. So of course it's mostly the negative stuff that they want you to fix. And I was like, well, this is terrible. And I threw it in a drawer. I didn't touch it for a year. And then when I finally pulled it out again, I was like, this isn't that bad. And now it has won 4 awards. It was an Amazon editor's pick. So I'm glad that I did it. The process was hard. But I'm very happy that I have that book. And looking back on that time is kind of bittersweet now.
Did you feel like writing, because I know you're forcing yourself to do it, but if you're forcing yourself to do it, there's something in that you that wanted to do it. Did you feel like it was helpful for your mental health to write?
At that time with that book, yes, I do. And I do want to caveat that by saying I do think that there are times when you need to take a break and let yourself just do something else. But at that time, yes, because I don't know what I would have done otherwise with myself. And it probably drank. So this was probably the better option. And I do think, because Ghost Tamer does deal with, I mean, I have a lot of humor in it. I really, my main character is very funny. I made her a comedian specifically for this reason, but the book touches on, I mean, the very first scene, the premise of the book is she's writing, she's a comedian, aspiring comedian, writing the L in Chicago back from an open mic with her best friend, and it flies off the rails, killing everyone except her. And now she can see ghosts. So she's dealing with survivor's guilt and these ghosts that she doesn't know where they came from. And another ghost is now trying to attack her and destroy her, and she doesn't know why. So as she tries to like unravel these things, she starts dealing with things from her past that she has shoved away and not wanted to deal with. So she basically has to, it's a lot about exploration of grief and moving on. People usually cry on chapter 13 or the very end, if not both. So if you do cry during the books, you will cry. And I don't know that I could have gotten the depth of her feelings if I had not dropped to that place myself. Not that I think that's a great place to be in, but she is not doing well at the beginning of the book. We meet her at her worst, and I wanted a character who grieves messily and makes bad choices and maybe doesn't do the healthy thing sometimes, but still is capable of being loved and is still capable of being funny. And people are still rooting for her. And then at the end, she claws her way out. So a little bit of hope there at the end.
So Meredith, I know this book, but for full disclosure, I haven't read it, but I've heard. I didn't know this was you. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm so excited. I've heard like on a podcast or on, gosh, I don't even know. I've heard other stand-ups talking about this book.
Really?
And yeah, and as soon as you said the L train went off the tracks, and so yeah,
that's so cool.
And so I can't pinpoint where I heard this discussion, but it was one, how accurate the life that you portrayed as of a stand-up, but two, that it was such an emotional roller coaster, and that, like, gosh, I wish I could remember. Someone was like, I never cry. And I cried during and when you said that they cried in chapter 13. So this is a full-throated endorsement of a book I haven't read yet, but I will now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I've heard people talking about you.
That's
and now
so
you're
cool.
Right here.
Wow. That's amazing. No,
I'll try to remember where it was, but I'm sure I won't.
I was an actor in Chicago for 17 years. So, and I never did official stand-up. I did some improv, but I had friends who did stand-up. And of course, I love watching stand-up. And a lot of stand-up comedians, a lot of comedians in general, have dealt with some kind of depression or something like that. And that's one reason they do the comedy. And that's why Rayleigh does her comedy as well. She can explore some of these things.
So who are some of the people that you ran across, and maybe you're going to say a name and it'll be like, oh yeah, it was Tom Dreesen that was talking about it or whatever, but it wasn't him. But
I don't know if I know any famous people personally. Kevin Naughton was my friend. And he was the one stand-up that I was a really good friend with. And I know that he's brushed shoulders with some other people, but mostly it was actors that I knew. But gosh, it would be really cool if some famous, I actually applied to be a guest on Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. And I was just like, oh my God, I think Conan would really like this book. I would really love Conan to have my book. But
oh man, if that happens, I
applied 2 years ago, so maybe I'm not interesting enough, or maybe they just have that much of a backlog. But
well, when they see this episode, there's no turning back now. So pretend Emily's Conan and tell her why you should be her friend. Real quick before we get back to serious stuff, what was that process? Did you make like a packet or just a pitch, or how did you apply to be on there when you said you?
Oh, so they have like a link. Like I listened to the podcast, and they have a little short ones that are Conan O'Brien Needs a Fan, where he'll talk to like a fan, like all over the world. And so you basically like fill out this little form in the link, and there's a number you can call too, but who wants to call people on the phone? So I filled out the little link, and you just basically say, I can barely remember. It's basic questions like, who are you? What did you do? Where do you live? Why do you want to talk to Conan, or something like that?
That is so cool. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah.
I thought about you, Emily, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the fan. Conan O'Brien needs a fan. What she was a thread working. She had like looms, and she was like being spoken to with all these looms around her.
See,
And,
I feel like they pick much more interesting people than me. Like everyone's
Conan,
got like some weird job that they do, or they're from an interesting country or something like that.
and Conan always tries to connect, like, and like there'll be some little shred in his life where there was a quilt involved or something, and where it brings him in. So that was a different time.
Yes.
You said when I wrote this book, I would have been like A, but then you had
Then
a
I
pivot
wrote
point. Then you had
Dagger
a
of
pivot point,
Lightning.
and you said, "Now I know it's okay to take a break."
Yes.
What was that pivot point when you went from I'm going to push through to now I'm a person that would take a break? What was that actual moment?
So I just want to preface this by saying I have a very hard time taking a break. I am not that I'm not good at it. And all of my friends would attest to this. My husband would attest to this. I'm not, my friend, one of my friends, Lauren, is like, you derive a lot of your self-value from producing and being productive. And I think maybe you need a hobby that is just fun and whimsical and you cannot monetize in any way. And anyway, we don't need to get too far into that, but
we've had a whole podcast episode about that.
We have all episodes that I have no idea what those people with hobbies like are talking about.
I know.
Whereas I'm like a
running doesn't
always
pay me anything. And she's like, yeah, but you have to do it every morning and you have a coach. And like, anyway.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time like where I just read, and I won't say like I didn't write, but it was after I finished Ghost Tamer and I sent it off to people, and I just devoured some books and just literally took a lot of walks, listened to a lot of music. And when I did come out of that time, I wrote Dagger of Lightning in 28 days.
Wow.
And
so when you said you were fast,
that is kind of insane. I've never drafted anything that long, that quickly again. And I will say there were several rewrites of Dagger before it got to where it is now. But that's just the difference in the mental switch also. And not only that, because I had been reading just so much, I think I got all this new ideas, like things started churning. And I will be honest, when I first came up with the idea, I was afraid it was stupid. And had one of my very trusted friends, I like literally had like 10,000 words in like a couple of days. And I was like, would you just look at these words and just tell me if you think this idea is stupid? And she read it and she was like, I do not think this is stupid. I think you should write it. And it just poured out of me. But I do think that a lot of that, like, because everyone's like, how do you just keep having the ideas? And I'm like, literally, I'm running in the morning and the next scene just comes to me and I can't wait to get it down. But I think all of that is because I had that period of break, like in between, where I was either just tweaking on Ghost Tamer but reading and just walking around listening to music and just daydreaming and stuff like that. And it was okay. And I was okay with that, because I had pushed myself through Ghost Tamer and I was like, I am good. Like somehow that ticks the little box in my mind that was like, must be producing. It's like, oh, well, it's being like looked at right now by other people. So I'm perfectly fine to take a break. But I think it was important. And I think that it was a good creative time for my brain.
So I'm going to lean in a little further.
Okay.
What was that moment where you said, were you just like at the period A, pivot point, period B, at the end of were you just so exhausted? What was that like? What made you take the break?
I think part of it was getting through Ghost Tamer. And so I kind of gave myself that mental permission. Like, I have done a thing and it was a really hard thing. So I'm going to let it sit because you're supposed to take breaks before you read a thing again. But I was like, yeah, no, now I'm doing this. And like, so I think that gave me a little bit of permission, but also a friend of mine gave me a couple of books for Christmas, to be honest. And I had been reading, and this is a real thing that people do. When you are depressed or you're uncertain and you're afraid, you tend to go back to the things you've already read. You go back to the series as you've already watched. So I was rereading Anne McCaffrey's books, like just that I've read 10 billion times. I could probably recite them. As a matter of fact, my husband got the abridged version for like a road trip, and I was like, this is they're missing some words here, which is very freaky. But so I was just rereading stuff all over. So I got these new books for Christmas, and I read, and it was like my mind got blown open. I was like, oh wait, and so I started finding. I was like, I want more. And so I just started devouring these new books. And I will say the timing was probably correct because I was probably coming out of it a little bit. But it was just like, I was just like, this was great. And I had not read like recent books in so long. I think because I'd been in a period of uncertainty for so long. So we moved to Nashville. Our apartment immediately caught on fire. Like it was crazy. And then there was a tornado, and then there was the pandemic. So it was a lot of uncertainty for a very long period of time for me. So I had been just reading regurgitated stuff for a very long time. So I think that was it. I think it was I have pushed through this, and I'm going to take a break now. And then just the timing of getting those new books and it kind of blowing my mind open and how much I loved them. If anyone was wondering, it was Ninth House and Addie LaRue.
I think that's interesting because when I'm writing, a lot of times I'm too tired to read, especially if I'm also teaching at the same time because I'm reading, like I'm grading. And so taking that break to refill, like you've emptied your cup, now you're refilling your creative cup. And like the way that really does inspire me too. Whenever I read something new, I'm having all these new ideas, and it just makes me feel more creative when I'm taking in other people's creativity.
100%. And it inspires you. Like I never would have written, the kind of book that I wrote if I hadn't read all these other books,
Yeah.
It's important. Consuming is, helps you to have something to give.
Yeah.
It's like food for your soul.
That period of rest, that period of transition between the first book and the second book, where you were consuming and devouring all those books, what part of the production addicted person in you rationalize that as that was an activity, the reading and the running and the thinking, that was just your next activity before another book started?
Well, I think partly because I had other people looking at my stuff, I was like, it's being worked on, so that's okay. And I did write a couple of short stories and stuff that were not great. And I want to preface that by saying I don't think any writing is wasted. I have several projects that I started and I was just like, no, this isn't going anywhere. And I stopped. And I don't think that was wasted, but I do think those periods of time where I'm just kind of picking at something, it like gives my little brain the like, okay, we're writing, but really I'm like satisfying that while I'm consuming deeply or whatever. Now I'm a little better about it. It's like, no, it's okay to just spend an entire Sunday reading a book if you're really like into it, and those times are good. But for me, I do tend to be better about it when I have offed my writing to someone else to read. It's like, okay, it's working still. It's off the side, working on its own now. I'm waiting for feedback or, whatever.
If someone is watching this and they're wondering, do I have depression? You said one red flag already, or possible red flag. First of all, I want to make clear that I'm never trying to other people, and that everyone's depression is different, right? So every single person, and that's one of the things that Emily has taught me over the last year, is that every person's, whatever their thing is different for that person. So one of the red flags was you were reconsuming old content. You were watching old movies and reading old books. What are some other things you noticed for you that are like, oh, I might have this issue?
Yeah. So I have mine is kind of fun in that I want to say that I did finally get a therapist, and I am in therapy, and so I'm learning some of this stuff now. I knew I had OCD as a child, but I thought I had grown out of it because my OCD was very classically presented as a child. You count the steps you go up, and if one leg doesn't get enough, you remember on the next set of steps you go up and things like that. Anyway, my therapist recently tested me again, and she was like, okay, so you were mild, but you were 1 point away from moderate. And those things can kind of spike. And so we're still trying to unravel, is the anxiety first or is the OCD first? Because they do kind of feed each other. And so whenever I have depression, the anxiety is always kind of there. And there is a little bit of OCD there also. All of those things kind of spike together. So I have a fun cocktail. Things that I will notice, I avoid people. I'm usually really responsive with answering my emails, getting on top of things, answering my phone, and I will stop. I will see them come through and just not have the bandwidth and leave things on red for days, which is not like me. I will not, respond to people when they try and call me. And at the same time, I will convince myself that no one wants to hang out with me. I'm not really fun right now. That's why I have nothing going on, when really I have isolated myself. And even when I see myself doing it, I can't stop doing it. And my brain will still tell me it's because you're not fun that no one's checking in on you. It's because you're sad right now and no one wants to talk to someone who's crying all the time. So that's a big one. Another thing is I really enjoy, and I know that I am weird in this way, but I really enjoy getting up early and running before the rest of the world is awake. I like that time. And if I start giving myself an extra 5 minutes, an extra 10 minutes, an extra half hour, suddenly it's an extra hour. That's another sign when I'm not getting out of bed, or when I'm really excited. And I mean, after a certain period of childhood, everyone's really excited to get to bed. But when I'm just I think I'll go to bed at 8.
Yeah.
Another thing that I really do, which is easy to convince yourself that this is fine, because it kind of goes into what we were talking about, taking a break, reading and consuming, but I will get to the point where I disassociate hard enough to where I do not ever have my own thoughts going. I will be plugged into an audiobook if I have to do routine cleaning or anything like that, or showering or getting dressed or lifting weights. Any time when my mind could possibly be wandering, audiobook. No music. I stop listening to music unless I'm running. It's all audiobook. Or if that's not happening, I'm reading. The only time I allow myself not to be plugged into someone else's world is if I am doing something that requires my utmost attention. So I tend to dissociate a lot. And that takes my productivity box, because I'm look at all the books I've read, and things like that. I also I love to-do lists, love them. But when I am depressed, I often find myself just not looking at them and not doing them. So those are all signs for me, especially and then I feel worse, right? Because as has been pointed out to me, I link a lot of my self-worth to being productive. So when I just let things fall, I feel worse about myself. And then I just beat myself up for not having done those things. And it just kind of perpetuates the spiral.
Do you, Emily, do the, I'm going to call it noise, but the disassociation thing where you're connected to other people's worlds?
Did you see me nodding my head
Yeah, and so
I related to a lot of the things that you said.
Where I'm always thinking about what I got to do next, and I'm making lists in my head. And
so one of the things I notice when I'm happy is then I'm more listening to music, and I'll sing in the shower and stuff like that. I can't remember the last time I've sung in the shower.
Wow.
But yeah, when I was writing Dagger of Lightning, I had made a whole playlist for it. I was singing all the time and waking my husband up because I was singing in the shower and he was grumpy. But, I was me. and, you know, making plans with people and texting people. And I wasn't caring, like, if they wanted to hear from me. I had things to say. And so, like, that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Is,
We've had more than one guest, and then I'm also this way, is some of your best ideas are in the shower, or your next chapter you're going to write are in the shower. Well, that doesn't happen if you're listening to a podcast in the shower.
right. Well, and also, if you're not getting enough dopamine, if your brain is not making enough because you're in that depressed place, you're searching for it.
Yeah.
In other places. Like, I had to put limits on all of my apps, like time limits, because I was like, I do not want to rot my brain this way, but I could just stare at freaking TikTok for an entire day when I was at my worst, you know? So, and I think that is one of the hard things, is when you see yourself in it, trying to figure out like how to cope with it. And one of the things that I make myself do when I notice I'm in a disassociation spiral, or like, as I make myself stop at a chapter ending. It's like, next chapter ending, we're going to stop. We're going to look at the list. We're going to see what we can do. And I pick something small, like, you know, clean the cat's litter, and do it, cross it off. And usually I feel I get that little hit of dopamine from just crossing off the list. And so then I want to do a couple more things.
Yeah.
And usually I'll cross off a few more things, and that will make me feel like a little better. But it's hard to remember that when you're like full in your comfy disassociation blanket. And, you know, it's hard to remember to like stop and do those things.
It is so true, though, that once you kind of make yourself do a few things, you get this like, oh, what else can I do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's empowering, and it's hard to remember when you're in the midst. One of the other things I like to tell people is to make low stakes commitments, especially when you're feeling good. Make the low stakes commitments for like later. So like, maybe you're not going to be able to go to a big party where you don't know a bunch of people when you're in that state, but you can have coffee with a friend one-on-one. And especially if you've already made the plans, don't cancel them. I had a book club that I go to a couple of the Parnassus book clubs, and they're huge, right? So many people. And there was one where I had read the book, like, liked the book. There was no reason for me not to go, except that I was seriously in my comfy dissociation blanket. And I was like, I don't want to stop listening to this audiobook to go to real life. But I made myself go, and I didn't say a lot to a lot of people, but I interacted a little bit. I gave some opinions, and I did feel better when I left. Because sometimes you just need to see, and sometimes it's just someone going, how are you? Like, you know, having another human be like, oh, how are you doing? Okay. Especially if you tend to self-isolate. It's like, oh, people do actually want to talk to me. Like, they could have talked to all these other 50 people, and they kind of came up to me.
Just like you said during the lockdowns, that community is what kept you going, that Sunday thing.
Exactly.
It kind of pulls you out of yourself it pulls you out of yourself, but also reminds you of who you are at the same time. Like, because I deal more with this with like anxiety, that if I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, that makes me feel down and depressed. Even if depression isn't like the overall thing, but going out and seeing other people is like, okay, I am not just this anxious person who, you know, sits on the couch all day. I am this other person as well that people know me as, and that can feel really like, it kind of brings you out.
Yeah, I had my first big anxiety spike this year, where it was like, this is anxiety. I lost my job, and I was just like, and it was my dream job, and I was like, oh no, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And like, it spiked so hard that I was like, I'm never going to get another job. Like, I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to be homeless. Like, went so far. And I don't have ADHD, but I was behaving as if I had ADHD. Like, I couldn't focus on one thing. It was so frustrating. I would start a thing. I would go into a room to start a thing and do something completely different. Like, nothing was being done. And writing was just like, forget about it. I would sit down to try and write and do anything but write, even though I was really trying to write. And the weirdest thing that happened that helped me with it, I was looking things up online, like, how do I focus with this anxiety? And I read something that was like, add a distraction. It sounds counterintuitive, but your mind needs something to chew on. so that you can focus. So I normally, when I write, when I'm in a good place, I can write in silence, or I have that special chill, very calm, either low lyrics or no lyrics playlist. What I had to do was put words, like things that I would run to normally, like pump you up music, in my headphones, and then I could write. It was like
Wow.
it gave the anxiety brain something to latch on to. And suddenly I was able to focus. It was so strange. I would have never tried it had I not read about it, but I was like that. And I still do it sometimes. It's like, if I know it's like, okay, this isn't working. Let's try the noise.
Is it always the same song?
No, so I do obsess a little bit with songs. So sometimes I will get on one song. It's like, this is song on repeat. And, but that is not limited to anxiety or depression times. But no, it's, there's a couple playlists that I'll rotate through. It's just, for some reason, when I'm in a bad anxiety spot, it has to be distracting music, or music that I normally would have called distracting, and not the mellow, chill music that kind of fades into the background.
It makes me think of my husband, who I outed as having ADHD in our last episode, or with our episode with HH. And because he'll do things where I think he's not paying attention at all.
Right.
To like either we're watching a movie, or
he'll play Candy Crush or something while you're
so Sunday we had stayed up late. We ended up sleeping in, so we streamed church on our TV. And so, we're listening to the sermon, and I'm like just watching the sermon. He's like scrolling on his phone and doing some other things and eating and, moving around. And I was like, so did you get any of that? And he was like, oh yeah, I was listening.
Yeah.
He said when he was a kid, he used to like crochet in church because it was the only way he could focus.
Yeah.
So like now, like that was when he was a kid, when they didn't have like fidget stuff. But like now that's what people do, is you have something to fidget with, or you have a journal, or, something to do with your hands or your mind,
Mm-hmm.
other than just listening. And then he listens better.
Yeah. When my husband ever wants me to watch TV, I'm like, okay, I need to either pay the bills or I need to knit.
Yeah, do something
while we're doing it, because for some reason I've never sat still very well. I have a treadmill desk. My foot is always going. My mom, when she was pregnant with me, called me Bigfoot. Point to the spot in her stomach where my foot was, and I would wiggle it back and forth, and I would shake the bed apparently sometimes. So I was like, yeah. So I don't sit still very well. So I identify with that. Now I can pay attention when I'm normal. Normal is a weird word, but and look at things. But yeah, it is weird. It's like your brain is so unfocused or anxious or whatever that it needs something to like sit on it, I guess.
Yeah, I used to, you were talking about like just filling your head with things other than you. Like when I was in my worst state of like depression, anxiety, I would play video games while listening to an audiobook or a podcast, or music, and I would have something else going on. Like it was like full.
I would watch those
sensory.
People clean carpets.
Yeah.
Have you seen those people that clean carpets?
Yes.
When I was at my worst, I would listen to an audiobook and watch them clean carpets.
Yep.
Or watch people paint things.
Yep. That's another thing my husband loves. He loves those restoration videos.
Yeah.
They're so satisfying.
Or like pressure washing. Yeah, I don't know why. It's satisfying, and it's like, oh, I can still listen to my audiobook, but now my eyes are busy also. Yeah. It's that weird place that we live in, that we're these coping mechanisms we've developed.
Well, speaking of weird, while you give our viewers and listeners a call to action, for the first time ever in 54 episodes, I'm going to stand up because my foot has fallen asleep. I'll just foot dock, and it's literally, it feels like it's going to fall off.
Oh my goodness.
I have a friend who broke her foot standing up when it was asleep, so be very careful.
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to stand up now.
Don't fall over.
I'm not leaving the episode while you tell our viewers and listeners their call to action.
Okay. Well, my call to action is, I would like it if sometime this week, people try writing in a different way. And that can be writing in a different spot than you normally do, writing with different music than you normally do. If you normally write alone, see if you can write with a buddy, and see what it does.
That's so fun. I love that. So, listeners, you all can, like, I want to hear from you all about that, what you decide to do, or if you do it, then let us know how it goes. You can respond to the show notes of this episode at writebettertogether.com/podcast, or you can respond on social media on Facebook, X, or Instagram when we share this episode, or you can respond directly in the YouTube comments.
Yay.
That was a great call to action. I didn't
it.
want people to think I didn't agree since they couldn't see my agreeable face. It actually helped. Thank you for indulging me.
I'm glad your foot's not broken.
I did not break my foot. How did that happen?
She like her legs literally fell asleep and she stood up, walked to the bathroom, and like her legs she couldn't feel her feet, so she tripped and broke a bone in her foot.
Oh my goodness.
All right, my final question is, how many swords do you have, Meredith Lyons?
I have 4 swords. I have a machete and I have several knives. How many swords do you have?
0. I think you're the first guest who on their website confessed to having swords. And so John Mulaney has a talk show now live on Netflix, and when he takes live calls, he often ends the call with, "What kind of car do you drive?" We're gonna now end, thanks to you, Meredith, every episode with asking our authors to come on how many swords they have.
I think that's excellent.
We probably won't carry through with that.
Amazing.
But do you own swords, Emily?
No, we have lightsabers.
So, do lightsabers count, Meredith Lyons?
I mean, it is a sword. I don't know how much damage you could do with it.
It is plastic, so
in real life. My husband really wanted to have a lightsaber battle with me during our wedding. And I finally was like, listen, I am not morally opposed. I know I would kick your ass, so that is not bothering me either. But like, let's look at how expensive this is and how much time we already, like, this wedding is going to go so fast. Anyway, he made the choice on his own eventually. One of his friends apparently emailed, was like, I've got him in my cart. I can buy him for your wedding gift right now, or I can give you the money. And so he made the decision on his own. Is like, no, I don't think we can handle it.
Can you tell us what a falchion is?
Falchion?
Yeah.
I believe it's something that you murder someone with. Like it's a bludgeon or something. I know the silver falchions are Killer Nashville's award. And I know the claymore is something that you bludgeon someone with. So what is a falchion?
I thought for sure that the sword expert would know.
Well, I've never used one.
It came up because we were talking about the awards.
Oh, I guess it does. It says it's a sword. Oh. A one-handed, single-edged sword of European. Oh, it's one of those curved blades. Often, it's like a cutlass. So it's early 16th, 13th, 16th century. I do have more Japanese-inspired swords.
Nice.
I thought it was curved because it's like an Alibaba sword, right?
Well, it looks more like a machete. So it's not like a scimitar kind of curve. It's like a straight back with like a pelican beak kind of blade.
Oh, birds wound up in the episode. we never went on a rabbit trail that included swords before, but we brought it back to birds. So
weapons are always fun.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys. This was so much fun.
Best of luck with your book launch today.
Thank you. I'm so excited. And my mom did make dagger-shaped cookies.
That's perfect. I love it.
And we're back. Wow. Look at all those swords that she owns.
We should have asked her to bring some out and display.
We should have. I saw her marathon running badge that was like up above her head.
Yeah.
I didn't point that out. That was there's so much. Every interview we do, man, there's just so much that's great about it. I like community was important. I like that she underscored your life tenet of just do one little thing, right? The one little thing breaks the pattern.
Break the pattern.
You need to leave me I'm giving you a job to do. before you go have this baby, you need to leave me like with some Emily's guiding principles to get through this time without you, and that would be one of them. Like, remember to do this one little thing to break a pattern. I don't know what the
I didn't
version
realize I
of,
had so many, but apparently I
but
do.
yeah, but you do. And then the new one that you taught me, it doesn't matter until it gets a name.
You don't love something you love something more when you name it, when you give it
Yeah,
a name.
that's amazing. And so, I need those listed.
Awesome. Hey, Jon Meyers,
Yes.
can animals make art?
Oh man, I was thinking about that the other day. No, because I got in another one of those conversations, group chat with one of those art versus product people who say everything you write is art, and if you have any intention of making a single dollar off of something you write, then it's not worth writing. I'm like, give me a break, dude. He told me I had a plebeian attitude. How about that? So then I was like, I wonder if animals think about making product versus their art. So my answer is yes, an animal can make art.
Why is that your answer? I want to go deeper.
I just told you my whole train of thought.
You didn't explain why animals can make art, though.
Okay, art is a creation, whether right, an entity that can be aesthetically admired.
Okay.
By I think by more than one person. Can a human or an animal make art for just one person? I suppose, but
I think so.
yeah, I guess, but I don't think it would be that. I think it needs to be appreciated by more than one person.
I disagree. I think you can write like a poem or something for a person, and that they're the only ones who read it. It's just for them.
Yeah, I can see that, but I think a more successful poem that impacts more than one person. But maybe not, because what if that one poem talked someone out of doing something bad, or talk them out of a toxic relationship? That one poem could have a lot of power for one person.
Well, and it's still art.
And it's still art. All right. So you're telling me that is this a bird creating the art, or any animal? A monkey?
Any animal, but I'm going to talk about birds in a moment.
Okay. So this conversation we just had means intention matters.
So that's what I was wondering, because if art is a product, if your work is a product, then does it matter if you even enjoyed creating the product, or if you have intention behind it?
I have an answer.
Okay.
So someone dies on the side of an interstate, and those memorials pop up where the crosses, and people leave a teddy bear there, and they decorate it with flowers. That's actually folk art that's actually studied and collected. There's no intention for that to be art, but it becomes art.
Yeah.
So intention is normally happens, but it doesn't have to happen.
This is really becoming just a philosophical question about what is art.
We're the internet's two most leading philosophers, aren't we?
This is not going to be a fact. This is all just questions, basically. Because what I found, there's an article. It's from studyfinds.org. Can animals make art? And guess what? They don't answer the question. The author seems to say that they don't make art, but that it's possible we could maybe think of it that way. It really depends on your definition of art. But here's what's interesting about what birds do. Because okay, you've probably seen like dogs, they've put paintbrushes in their mouths and they paint stuff, or pigs or elephants or monkeys, or they've actually trained them with behavioral training to paint things.
I've seen it with a dog. I've never seen it with a pig.
There's a pig named Picasso.
Oh, wow.
That was trained. But what the article says is a lot of these, they're trained because I do this, I get food. And there's not as much maybe you don't see the pig stand back and look at the art, admire what it's done, and be like, look at, they're just going through the motions.
So the pig is getting it to get a reward, but so then you're saying art has to be made for someone.
I'm not saying that. I'm just bringing up these interesting ideas, because is it art if it was not made by an artist? Could it be art even
Yes.
if the pig wasn't an artist?
Yeah, a muffler man is art, and it's not made by an artist. It's made by a muffler repairman.
Sure. So this is the philosophy of it. Now, let me tell you about certain birds that are very intentional about making things. I'm not going to call it art yet. So there are these birds called birds of paradise, and there are other birds who do this as well. But birds of paradise are these South American birds that, if you look them up, there's tons of variations of them. Like birds of paradise, it's kind of like saying it's a duck. Like there's so many different kinds. But what a lot of them do is they will, and there's a documentary that shows this, and if I remember the name, I'll put it in the show notes. They will find a section in the forest. They will clear out anything colorful or green or whatever to make kind of like a stage. Sometimes they'll surround it with things that are colorful, but they want contrast. But the main thing is they want to be the star of the show. And so they're clearing this area to emphasize their own features. Some of them will surround themselves with like beautiful like flowers and leaves. Some of them will surround themselves with like shiny objects like coins and other things that they found. And they want to create this environment to attract a female. So they're doing this intentionally. They know that it's attractive, and the females are attracted to it because they will come in and see. And then the birds themselves, they perform a dance, which some might say that dancing is a form of art. So what this author is saying is like, well, but if it's just about attracting a mate, and it's just maybe she's attracted to him genetically because he can do these things, then it's not really art. There does seem to be some kind of appreciation that's exchanged. So I don't know. What do you think?
So the way that this author, is it a man?
You know what? In my mind, it was a man, but I actually don't know. Sean.
Sounds like a man.
Sean Simpson.
Because that what the last part contradicted the beginning, because to dismiss it as art because its intention was to attract a woman bird, then I can't write a poem to attract a woman, and that poem is still art.
And he does bring that up. He doesn't dismiss it. He just says, again, he doesn't answer anything. He just kind of brings up questions that people have.
Well, then,
but he talks about like a lot of music is mostly about like attraction and
study finds normally
and...
has actual studies,
yeah.
not suppositions.
There are also fish that do this. There's a puffer fish that will make these elaborate like designs in the sand to attract mates.
So that episode that you had with all the big, we didn't know where they came from, the crop circle things.
Yeah.
Maybe animals made those to attract women.
Maybe.
Who knew?
Well, listeners, what do you think? Let us know.
Well, they don't intend. So it has to be art because they're not doing it for a product. They're not doing it to sell it.
Yeah.
And they're doing it to be admired.
But it is supposed to be for a specific purpose.
To be admired aesthetically.
Yeah.
Which is art.
And to make babies.
Is there a species that creates something ugly to attract a mating partner?
Well, is ugly subjective?
Well, you just described beautiful flowers and a stage and a beautiful dance. Does someone like do like an awkward Pee Wee Herman dance or something?
This also, actually that question, because I don't know the answer to that question, but it did make me think, like, you don't see, or I've never seen, an animal stop and wonder at like a sunset or a pretty flower or, so it's like, but with those birds, there is something like the female is like, hey, what's that? I'm going to watch this display. I do think, just for me as a Christian, I see all of nature as God's art. And so to me, it is all art. But whether or not it's intentional from the animals or if they just do what they're supposed to do,
Well,
don't know.
Meredith just talked about stand-up comedy, which some people would say that's an art.
Mhm.
To answer my own question, there is, I'm sure there are members of the opposite sex who are attracted to clean comedy and filthy, dirty, ugly comedy, whether it's male
Sure.
or female.
Sure.
And so there could be an
Oh, you know
ugly
what?
version of that
There
would still
is
be
actually,
attractive to
like, there are
someone.
some animals, I just remembered, they'll, like, do gross stuff. I won't go into detail because it's not for this
Good.
show. But they do gross stuff to attract.
To attract
Yeah.
a mate.
Yeah.
All right. One last question. What's the study called? The article called?
Can animals make art?
Yeah, it was the article was in the form of a question. What is the purpose of writing an article or supposedly a study that doesn't answer the question? Like, here's 40 pages of stuff that I want you to consider, and then not even say, well, the consensus seems to be, but then there, 70% says this, but there are outliers that say that. It's not, just don't give me a bunch of conjecture. Why are you in study finds?
I have found an interesting thing that may help. It says at the bottom, this article is republished from the conversation under a Creative Commons license. In other words, it came from a different medium that maybe wasn't as matched to what Study Finds usually publishes. And also, he kind of basically says, like, we can't get into animals' heads. So it's a difficult question because, again, everybody has a different definition of art. And then we don't understand animal psychology very well. And so how do you answer that question?
So Sean, is that what you said? Sean, I'm going to write an article for Study Finds. Why did Sean write this article? And I'm going to come up with 40 suppositions as to why he wrote this article that presents no answers or even possible answers. Maybe he wrote it just so we would talk about it on this episode of Write Better Together.
Why did I bring it up, right? I brought it up because I thought it'd be an interesting conversation.
It
Anyway.
is. I agree. It is. It's interesting. You brought it up because it has birds in it.
Well, I think that means it's time for me to not
Ring the
say the
bell.
final act.
It's time for you to ring the bell.
It's time for me to say that if you want to learn more about birds or hear from other amazing guests like Meredith Lyons, subscribe to the podcast so you'll get updates. You can subscribe to YouTube or wherever you're listening. You can also go to our website, writebettertogether.com, and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can have updates sent right to your email, including updates on webinars and things like that. If you want to get even more from the podcast, you can become a podcast or a Patreon supporter to get bonus content from every guest that we interview. And we'd love to hear from you all. So if you want to write a review or respond to a call to action, we love sharing those.
Awesome. Speaking of running marathons, such as our guest Meredith Lyons did, your baby might be crying. Look at that little marathon running baby. Your baby might be crying because I told him he couldn't run until they said go. There you go.
Yeah.
Stay.
Now it's time for the final act.
Speaking of beautiful flowers and birds, you will be playing for this copy of No Matter How It Ends, A Bluebird Song, which is a memoir written totally in haiku.
Wow.
And it's haiku like all over the page in different fonts, and like they're almost like poems of shape. Like look, like
that's
there,
cool.
that's like that looks like E. Cummins' poem that we've talked about before.
It does.
And it's a beautiful book. It's by Kat Lehman. And it was last year's or this year's Rattle chapbook prize winner.
Nice.
And so we need to have her on the show because this is an amazing book and I just love it. And we talk about memoir and we talk about birds. And you just said about birds putting beautiful flowers in a circle so they can perform in the middle of them.
And birds sing, which is also a form of art.
So many connections, and I had that all planned when it came out of my mailbox. Today, Emily, you will be playing to win that. I think you have to get them all right. All the questions right.
Okay.
You'll be playing Daniel Boone versus Davy Crockett.
Oh, no.
You could act a little bit more
Sorry.
excited about it.
Sorry, I'm going to have to recall my elementary school years.
All right. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Maybe you can get half of them right. I don't know.
They're the same person, right?
People think they're the same person, but they're not the same person. All righty. Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett? Which one is which? Number one question. You're looking at two pictures. They both have the exact same expression on their face. One looks like the older version of the other one.
That's what I was going to say. They just look like the same person, but like different ages.
Nope. Two different people. Two different men.
Okay, so one on the right is Davy Crockett.
Ding, ding, ding. You are correct.
Wow, that was completely random.
How about that? Next picture. Zoom up here.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. One of these is Daniel Boone and one of these is Davy Crockett. Which one is which?
They're both wearing coon hats. They have very similar faces. Like their noses are the same.
Obviously there was not photography back then, so these are pictures of actors playing them on they both had their own television
Well, they did really good job because they look like the paintings above.
Yes, they do. I agree.
I'm gonna just switch it. The one on the left is Davy Crockett.
Wrong.
You kept it the same.
Because just like when we played that game where which city was it? I kept them on the same side so I would remember which one's which. So the one on the left is Daniel Boone and the one on the right is Davy Crockett. They're both played by Fess Parker in their TV shows.
Oh, no wonder it looks like the exact same person.
So, yes, and we talked about it with ghosts and we talked about it with something else when pop culture or when literature sets the reality for something.
Yeah.
The same actor, Fess Parker, played both of them on television around the same amount of time, and people say that's why these days, even if you didn't watch that, people confuse the two.
Interesting, yeah.
All right. I have two theme songs. Now, they're not on the left and right, so there's no clue there. So
I think I might know this one.
The first theme song was Blank was a man, yes, a big man, with an eye like an eagle and as tall as a mountain was he. Blank was a man, yes, a big man. He was brave, he was fearless, as tough as a mighty oak tree.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's Daniel Boone.
Okay. And then born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, greenest state in the land of the free, raised in the woods, so he knew every tree. What a great claim to fame. I know every tree.
He knew the name of the tree, and so he loved the tree.
Killed him a bar when he was only 3. Blank, king of the wild frontier.
Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
Okay, so how do you know that song?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I know that song too. So what are you saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that one's Davy Crockett. The other one is Daniel Boone.
Ding, ding, ding. You are correct. Now let me stop
I wondered
sharing.
if the song would come up because as soon as you said Davy Crockett, that song came to my head.
Isn't that interesting? And we're both not old enough to remember that TV show, but still ready for the trivia portion of this game.
Okay.
Because I love trivia. Oh, yeah. Were they both born in the same state?
I didn't pay attention to the songs to see where they were, if it mentioned where they were from. I know that, I'm pretty sure here we have the Daniel Boone National Forest. I'm going to say no.
They were not born in the same state. Would you like to guess where Daniel Boone was born?
I'm thinking Tennessee or Kentucky. Tennessee?
Wrong.
Why do we have the national forest then?
Yeah, Kentucky also has everyone claims Daniel Boone, man.
Where's he from?
You want to guess 49 more states,
No.
or do you want to know the answer? Pennsylvania. He was
Wow,
born.
I was so wrong.
Davy Crockett was born in what state?
Now I'm questioning everything. Oklahoma.
Wrong. Tennessee.
I was trying to think maybe it was just something completely different from what I thought, but okay.
And all right. Daniel Boone died in what state?
Tennessee.
Wrong. And we've had a recent guest from this state.
Oklahoma.
No. Daniel Boone died in Missouri, where Sheila Gunlock spoke to us from. Davy Crockett died in what state?
Kentucky. I'm just going to keep going with the same states that I've named.
No. You should know this one. And I didn't know any of these until today either.
How would I know that?
You would know where Davy Crockett died when I tell you.
I do not.
All right. I'm not going to tell you that one yet because it'll give away the answer to the next one. One of them died at the age 85 in 1820, and one of them died at the age 49 in 1836. Which one died old? Which one died young?
Going by the pictures that we looked at earlier.
Oh, that's a good clue.
Daniel Boone died older.
And you are correct.
There you go.
That was a good detective
Some
work.
of this I've been able to use logic.
So now you can deduce that Davy Crockett died at the younger age of 49. You know how he died.
No, I don't.
Yes, you
I don't
do.
remember anything about these people.
Okay,
except
know how
that they
he
wore
died.
coon hats.
I didn't know they both wore raccoon hats until I thought Davy Crockett did and Daniel Boone didn't, and that's how you could tell them apart. Till I found a picture of them both wearing raccoon hats. All right, so Davy Crockett died at the younger age in 1836. That's a clue of the state that he died in.
How? How is that a clue?
I'll give you one more clue. Earlier in the episode, I mentioned Pee Wee Herman.
I know nothing about Pee Wee Herman.
He didn't die he did die, but he didn't die in the state. But he visited this state when his bike was stolen.
I don't know anything about Pee Wee Herman. How would that help me?
Well, I can't help you have a different cultural inventory than I do. All right, what happened in 1836 in a specific state that would cause a man's death? A frontier man's death.
This is making me look dumb.
No, it isn't, because I didn't know this until an hour ago.
1837?
Wait, stop. You think the whole audience is at home going, oh, this is so obvious. That's when we landed on the moon.
But you're acting like it's obvious. You're like, you'll know when I say it's 1837.
Well, yeah, if someone told me, then I would know, but I wouldn't know on my own cognizance.
No, you told me that I would know.
You'll know when I say it, but same thing. Yesterday, I wouldn't have known, but if someone would have said it, I would have been like, oh, yeah, I remember that now.
There was a huge mining explosion.
Oh, that's a good guess. But no, he died at the Alamo, man.
I was like, I know it's war related.
See?
But I was trying to figure out which place it would have been in.
See? So yeah,
Texas.
So don't feel dumb because I didn't know yesterday either. But then when I looked it up where they each died, then I was like, oh, yeah, he did die at the Alamo. There you go. I think today's game makes you want to wish that Baggy came back.
It makes me want to learn more about them. So I'll have to watch those Disney movies.
Here's a bonus question. Now that you know they were live at the same time, because I told you their death ages, did they ever meet? Oh.
Yes.
They have never met.
Wow.
There's lore about them meeting. There was a TV movie about them meeting, but they never met. Is there anyone living a life similar to you, a writer, poet, Christian blogger, that people confuse you with, that you should meet before before you're 86 years old, so they go, oh, Emily Brooks and so never got to meet?
We'll never know.
If that happened, you know what they'd say?
What?
We couldn't have done it
Couldn't have done
without
without
you.
you.